For the next 4 weeks, we're going to talk, hopefully more briefly than my last couple of series, about the idea of trusting God. And I was reading this book by Andy Stanley. It was called Enemies of the Heart, if I remember the name correctly. And he goes through the different things that can cause diseases in our spiritual heart, jealousy and greed and whatnot. And he tells a story in this book, and I really like this story. So this guy he lives in an apartment, he lives on the second floor, so he has to, go upstairs to his apartment. And as he's going up and down the steps, he realizes that he's getting a little bit lightheaded, a little bit shortness of breath. And as he's getting real concerned, he doesn't have the same, let's just say stamina as he used to. He's getting a little bit concerned about it. So he goes to the doctor and says, hey, I'm having this problem. I'm getting real lightheaded and I'm really easily getting tired and stuff. And so the doctor says, well, let's run some tests. And doctors love running tests, don't they? They're all like, I need some. Honestly, I think that vampires are real. I know that everybody talks about them being fantasy. I think that they're real. And I think that they are doctors because they're always asking you for your blood. They're like, we need a sample. It's like, but I just stubbed my toe. We need a blood sample. So, he goes to the doctor and says, I'm having this problem. And the doctor says, okay, let's run these tests. So he runs some tests. He meets back with the doctor the whole time, probably looking up stuff on WebMD to see if he's got cancer or something. You guys have never done that? Okay. If I found out that my sore toe means that I have a brain tumor. And so he comes back and meets with the doctor again. And the doctor says, he comes in looking real serious. And he says, this isn't great. There's nothing wrong. You don't need surgery yet. But if you don't start changing your lifestyle, you will. You're on the downward trajectory, and you really need a lifestyle change. Your body won't be able to maintain what you're doing. It's okay, though, because I think we caught it early enough. There's a very simple solution. And he gives them this exercise routine. And he says, for 3 days a week, you follow what I've written down on this sheet for 3 days a week. And you'll start getting stronger. And so then in a couple weeks, we'll have to meet again, probably in 4 to 6 weeks, and we'll have to up it to a more difficult exercise level. So that way your heart gradually gets built up and gets stronger. And he says, now, Doc, you're not listening, okay? My heart can't take this. It's weak. You just said so yourself. You just told me about how I'm going to need surgery if I don't get this taken care of. I can't do this exercise routine. You're going to kill me. And the doctor says, well, that's why you need to start this exercise routine, is because your heart is too weak. You need to strengthen your heart. And he says, doctor, you're not listening. You need to heal my heart so I can exercise. Now, if you were listening to that story, you're probably thinking the exact same thing that I thought when I first read the story. Is this guy crazy? And I have actually met quite a few people who they don't really want to do preventative measures like not eating McDonald's every day, going for a walk, things like this. But then they just want a quick, very simple pill to fix it. And then obviously the doctor says, hey, this pill's not going to do enough. You need to start, being more active. And we have this idea, fix this, God, so I can trust you. It's the same thing we do with the doctors. God, doctor, you don't understand. You need to fix my heart so I can be healthy enough to exercise. And the whole time, the doctor's saying, exercise and you'll be strong enough. It's the same thing we do with God. God, fix this situation so I can trust you. And the whole time God's saying, trust me. Trust me and I can work you through this. God, heal me so I can do. And God the whole time is saying, no, do now. So that you have to walk in faith in order to have faith. You can't just say, God, make all the problems go away so I can have faith. And, unbeknownst to me, my faith itself had gotten into kind of a place. When I was a kid, I kind of had a real strong desire for the whole God thing, But then as I got to college, it turned more into an intellectual thing. I just wanted to know more. I knew most everything about most everything that there was to know. I was usually the smartest person in the room about subjects. Nobody's going to be the smartest person because it's kind of relative, but about any given topic regarding the Bible or ancient history, that kind of stuff, I could blow anybody out of the room. I was just the smartest person in the room. Well, something that would kind of startled me is I thought if I became the smartest, I would be somehow superior to others. But what actually happened is I just got more lonely, and my walk with God became more of a museum that required maintenance rather than a interactive walk. Does that kind of make sense? If you've been there, you know what I'm talking about. If you don't, you're probably thinking, what is this guy talking about? Just say things clearly. So let me say it a different way. Most people believe in God. Around the world, statistically speaking, most everyone believes in God. Now, obviously, there's atheists and that kind of stuff, but when you take in the world's population, it's actually a small minority. Most people in the world believe in God. Maybe not the same God, but they do still believe in the idea of God. There's Christians, there's Muslims, there's all kinds of different things. And they all believe in some form of deity or divine nature. I mean, even people who think that they are part of a divine spark, there is still the belief in a spark. So there is still the idea of God of some sort. But what's difficult is moving past believing in God to believe God. It sounds the same, and for a long time I thought it was the same until I was seeing a counselor. This was probably a couple months back. I was talking to him, and he said, "You know, Michael, your problem is very simple. You don't really you don't really believe God. Yeah, sure, you believe in Him. You know, you're going through those motions, but you're just not really getting the idea of believing God. Is He who He says He is, or is He who you think He is?" And you know, I got to tell this before I move on. It's a slight sidetrack, but it's funny, and you guys look all so serious. When I started seeing a counselor, I came and saw my mom, and I said, "Yep, I was talking to the counselor, and he says it's all Dad's fault." And she goes, "Really?" And I said, "No, Mom. Oh my goodness! It's like we just found out I have asthma this last week, and so the first thing I said." My poor mom, she goes through so much. I went up to Mom and I said, "Yeah, the doctor says it's likely due because of something my mom did when I was a kid." And she goes, "Probably." And I was like, "Mom, I'm just kidding." Oh my goodness. The good thing, never mind. I'll go back to what I'm talking about here. So the idea of believing God is a lot different than believing in God, because you're going to naturally be thinking things in your head, okay? Things that might seem like a good idea at the time, or maybe there's something that you believe to be true from experience. Like Pastor brought up an example of healing. God doesn't heal because He didn't heal when I prayed for this person. Okay, so that's something maybe even subconscious that you're getting in your head, a thought, an idea about God. God doesn't heal. God doesn't love me. I'm not one of God's favorites. Or sometimes there's people who go to the other extreme. I am, you know, the one authoritative thing. I have such wisdom. Everybody should come to me. I have such depths of knowledge. You guys are all just too stupid to grasp my levels of spiritual depth. You know, it can really go either way. But either way, we have these ideas that we kind of form in our head about God. And believing God is a little bit different because you have to stop what you're thinking. And you have to compare it with Scripture, what God says about Himself versus what you're thinking about Him and what you're thinking to be true. And it gets even more confused when your feelings get in there, because feelings have a way of stopping us from thinking about things objectively. You know what I'm talking about? If you've been married, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Your wife will say something like, "Why did I ever even marry this woman?" Right? You have those moments in a marriage, or, you know, any relationship, really, those fleeting moments of, you know, anger or whatever, sometimes jealousy or whatever. And it all comes back with the same thing. You're feeling these things. It clouds our judgment. And with God, even more so, because we tend to hold God at this kind of point where everything is ultimately His fault, right? Oh, I stubbed my toe today. I ran out of gas. My car got a flat tire. Well, it's God's fault somewhere. I don't know how. I'm going through this difficult situation. I have bad health. Whatever. It's God's fault somehow. I'm not quite sure. I haven't worked out all the kinks, but I know it's His fault. And so we have to consciously stop and say, look, I'm feeling something that is not true. It's okay to have feelings. You're going to have feelings no matter what you do. But you don't have to believe your feelings. You don't have to act on your feelings. Just because somebody cuts you off and you feel anger doesn't mean you have to act on it and cut them off or flip them off or so on and so forth. So believing in God, you have to stop what you're thinking and stop what you're feeling, and you have to say, what did God say, though, about this or about Himself? Oh, God doesn't love me. I'm a waste of space. That's not what God said. That's what you said. And beyond that, believing God is a step in trusting Him. You're in the middle of a storm, something in life you can't control, you don't know what's going on, and you have to stop and trust Him in it. I mean, we all have those times in our lives where it's kind of world-shaking. Chuck was telling the story in his last series about his kidney failure. I've told before my story about my journey with Clytus, my story with my son dying, all these different things that we go through in life, the storms, whatever they are, we all have our own storms. And we always think that our storms are worse than everybody else. Nobody understands like us, right? And so we go through this storm, and the problem is there's this cutaway point. Okay, what I mean by a cutaway point is a line where when you get to it, you either have to move forward trusting in God. He's in control. He's good. I don't understand how that meets up with these bad things that are happening. I don't quite see how God can be who he says he is at the same time that these things are happening, but I'm going to choose to stand on that and believe that. This is who God is. Or when you come to that point, it kind of your faith can just kind of dwindle, where you can say, okay, yeah, God, I tried that. He's just not really in my corner. He doesn't really have my team, and he's kind of not really caring about me. And we can kind of go to that place. So, it's this place where when you go through these storms, it's a literal choice that you have to eventually make, where you have to choose to believe that God is what he says, or you have to choose to believe what you think about God. And we all come to these places in life. Is he good? Does he really love? Does he hear? Does he care? Is he in control? Everybody comes to this place in life. And right when you think that you've got your faith really under control, you're going to say something like this. Well, I'm pretty good. I got it all, pretty well in order. So now things are really going to start working out for me. So then another trial or another bad thing will come by, and you'll say, God, all you ever give me is more bad things. God, I scratched your back. Now scratch mine. I paid tithes. I went to church. I read my Bible. Whatever your to-do list of perfect Christianity is. I did those things. And so now you have to make sure nothing bad happens to me. And in the meanwhile, God is taking our faith from levels to levels, from where we are to where we are in the future. But God, I grew, and that was really hard. Yeah, you did grow 5 years ago, and now we're going to do something else that's hard. See what I mean? Our faith has to be tested and challenged, which is why the New Testament talks so much about not giving up when your faith is tested, because it produces endurance and those kinds of things. So we're going to talk a little bit about, for the next 3 Sundays after tonight, the idea of what trusting God. What is trusting God? What is believing God? Well, the first thing is it is not something. It is not doing nothing. Sometimes we have this idea in our head where if we are trusting God, that means somehow we just kind of sit on our thumbs and do nothing. There's actually a huge disconnect if you look at the culture around us, right? There's people who say, pray about it, but then don't do anything. And then people who say let's do something, but then don't pray about it. And it's kind of like this either-or fallacy, right? Either you're praying or you're doing something about it. But that's not really how it works. Those two things aren't really at odds. God tells us to go and do, and he tells us to pray and ask. So as we're doing, we're praying, right? Doesn't that make sense? It's not two things that are at odds. And so what we're going to look at is we're going to look at Joshua. I think this is a very interesting story. So all throughout the Bible, the Jews, they said that God was the one who gave them the promised land, gave them Canaan, the place that they were going to live. If you're unfamiliar with the story, it's in the book of Joshua. And so they always attribute it to God doing this thing. But if you look at who was actually carrying out the legwork, well, it was the Jews, it was the Hebrews. So let's look at this and see kind of how this adds up and kind of make some sense out of this, okay? After the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I am about to give to them, to the Israelites. I will give you every place where you set your foot, as I promised Moses. Your territory will extend from the desert to Lebanon, and from the great river, the Euphrates, all the Hittite country to the Mediterranean Sea in the west. No one will be able to stand against you all the days of your life. As I was with Moses, so I will be with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. Be strong and courageous, because you will lead these people to inherit the land I swore to their ancestors to give them. Be strong and very courageous. I think he said that already. Be careful to obey all the law my servant Moses gave you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, that you may be successful wherever you go. I really think that maybe God wanted him to be strong and courageous, yeah? When he says something like 3 times, it's like, okay, I think I need to be paying attention to that bit. So keep this book of the law always on your lips. Meditate on it day and night so that you may be careful to do everything written in it. Then you will be prosperous and successful. So there's a few things I want you to notice. Okay, first off, He says that you are going to go and conquer, yes, but then he also says, I'm going to give. Well, hold on. Am I going and taking it? Does God help those who help themselves here? Sounds like God's just sending me to go do this myself. But then he also claims that he's the one who's giving it, okay? So there's the two things that seem to be at odds, but really aren't. We're going to look at that in just a minute. And the third thing I want you to notice is that he says to keep the book of the law, so keep focused on God's word, right? And then he says, and then you will be prosperous and successful. In other words, you cannot do this on your own strength, but depend on me and I will give you the strength. Well, okay. All right, let's plow ahead. Play through. Have I not commanded you, be strong and courageous? Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. Now we hop down, or I guess this is actually the very next verse. So Joshua ordered the officers of the people, go through the camp and tell the people. Hold on just a minute. I wanted to, I knew I was forgetting to mention something. I did want to point this out here, how he says, do not be afraid, do not be discouraged. You know, oftentimes when God calls us to do something, we're trying to lean in and trust him. We trust him for a day, and then the next day, when the problem is still there, or maybe a new aspect of the problem presents itself, it's kind of easy to get discouraged. Dealing with something every day is harder than having a temporary battle, or something that you know is going to be a temporary battle, right? Like you're going through a problem at work and you know that the problem's not going to exist forever. It might go on for a couple of years, but not for forever. You have a health problem and you know it's probably going to go on for the rest of your life. And the idea of not being discouraged and trusting God as he's leading you forward, rather than just saying, God's not leading me just because I'm having problems. God was leading Joshua and the Israelites and they were having problems. So remember that. So Joshua ordered the officers of the people, go through the camp and tell the people, get your provisions ready. 3 days from now, you will cross the Jordan here to go in and take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving you for your own. So again, he said, you will take possession. Then chapter 3, verse 1, early in the morning, Joshua and all the Israelites set out from Shittim and went to the Jordan where they camped before crossing over. So here they're getting ready to go into battle. And 6:20 through 21, when the trumpet sounded, the army shouted, and the sound of the trumpet, when the men gave a loud shout, the wall collapsed. So everyone charged straight in, and they took the city. They devoted the city to the Lord and destroyed with the sword every living thing in it, men and women, young and old, cattle, sheep, and donkeys. Okay, so let's just real quick think about this. So who took the city? Israel. Okay, so keep this in mind. We're plowing ahead. Okay. The kind of first thing I want to say here is that God works through our workings. So let me just kind of we're gonna wind our way there. Okay. First off, Joshua was told to lead Israel into war. Okay, so that's by nature bad things. People are dying. He was told to lead Israel into loss. People that he knew were going to die. It was going to be a difficult time ahead. War isn't something that's like, oh, hooray, I get to go kill somebody. It's not like something that, hooray. I mean, when at the beginning of World War I, people had this mentality. Everybody's just hungry to go to war. They're just like, hey, let's go to war. It's a great idea. And then 4 months later, everybody's like, what were we thinking? But by then, they were all in a stalemate, and they couldn't stop, so it dragged on for another 4 years. And that's kind of the idea. Everybody has this idea, this trumped-up glory of battle. They've seen movies like Gladiator or something, and they think battle's this fantastic thing. But seeing people dead all around you isn't a fantastic thing. And, hearing the sounds and the smells of battle, it's something that stays with you for the rest of your life. This is what God was calling Joshua to lead Israel into. But here's another little thing. Joshua was told to lead Israel into eventual victory. And that's something that I think we sometimes lose sight of, is we lose sight of the end game. So God's taking me through the struggle, and that's all that I see is the struggle. So it's harder for me to make that choice and say, I'm going to trust God, because we see the struggle as a constant, right? Everything else is variables, but the struggle is a constant. We see God, he's just another variable. He could come and go, but the struggle, it's going to stay forever. And that's the exact opposite of what the truth is. So, God, I believe that you're going to do big things, so I will just sit and wait. Well, now we can really look at what I'm trying to say here. God works through our working. God takes us to places and uses us to accomplish his purpose. This was first established in Genesis, when he said, I will make man in my image. Part of what that means is that we were placed on this planet to act in God's stead, to do as he would do. Jesus again alludes to this and expands it not just beyond physical, but also into a more moral aspect when he says, I'm sorry, guys, I blanked a little bit. I'm going to have to move on. It's not going to come back. Me and Chuck were actually talking about this. Sometimes it's hard to pay attention to things up here since the stuff happened. But anyways, I'll just go ahead and move on. So God works through our working. In Psalm 135, 10 through 12, it says, He struck down many nations and killed mighty kings, Sihon, kings of the Amorites, Og, king of Bashan. Who's the he in this sentence? God. God is the one who struck down these. But no, hold on. Didn't we just read in Joshua about how Israel had done that? And then in Joshua chapter, I think it's 12 or 15, maybe 12, he goes and says, these are the lists of kings that Israel destroyed, that Joshua led Israel to destroy. And it gives the names, and these are some of the names. But here in Psalm 135, it says that God is the one who did it. Also, if you think back on in Exodus, when God is working through Moses, who's working the miracles, Moses or God? Well, yes. And it's one of those things where it's a little bit hard, but God works through people and accomplishes his will. He struck down many nations and killed mighty kings, Sihon, king of the Amorites, Og, king of Bashan, and all the kings of Canaan. You know, God goes with us as we do things. As the church works in the community, God is with us. He goes with us to do that. That doesn't mean we don't have problems. That means that we can rest assured that knowing in spite of the problems, that God is leading us forward. Our work isn't for nothing. Our work is for something. And he gave their land as an inheritance to his people Israel. So here we have Psalms attributing it to God. So we see obviously that God works through our working. Now, what we do is we have a kind of a conglomeration of things that happen. The first thing we do is kind of this laziness, where we know that God's called us to do something, but we just lack the energy to do it, or we lack the discipline maybe. You lack discipline. It's one of those things where as you're going through life, you start making these little soft choices, the easy choices, and you compromise on things, and you don't really realize how far you've gotten in compromising on the little things until it all kinds of adds up. And then you realize, wow, I live my life for myself, and I'm not really doing anything for God's kingdom. And so it's that kind of place of laziness, that spiritual apathy. Are we actively praying for our community? Are we actively praying for our enemies? Are we actively praying for, people to get saved in our families and whatnot? Or are we just kind of moved by laziness of, I've got my own life going on? Another thing, sometimes we're moved by indecisiveness. Rather than just doing something, we say, well, I don't want to make the wrong choice, so we do nothing. Well, I mean, you're going to make mistakes. I don't know how to let you down easy, but you can choose to do something with your life. You don't have to just say, oh, well, I might do the wrong thing, so I'm not going to do anything. So do the wrong thing. Do something for God's kingdom. And if it's not the right thing, well, at least you tried. Or you can go to your grave and say, look, God, I wanted to make sure that I didn't miss any possible options, so I didn't do anything. Jesus tells this parable about this guy. There are these servants that were given money with different amounts, and one of them just took it and he buried it and said, hey, I wanted to make sure you didn't lose your investment there. I got you back. And Jesus ends up calling the guy a foolish servant. And I think that the same thing applies when we're so wrapped up with the idea of, well, I want to make sure that one divine God's will thing that I don't do anything so I don't miss that thing. And the thing is, what if you never get that one divine will God thing? What if you just have some skills and you have some ability and you can do something today, like those other servants in that story who had the money and they invested it? Maybe it's something like that, where instead of you looking for this great big light from above, maybe you could just use what gifts you have for God's kingdom. I mean, some people are good with money, some people are good with music, some people are good with talking. We all have our different strengths, and God can use that if we let him. But the problem is oftentimes we just are kind of moved to this place of, well, I don't want to mess up. So mess up. Another thing that holds us back is perfectionism. I have to do it perfect, right, every time, all the time. I know actually a lot of people, and I'm one of them, who felt like God wanted them to write something. And so instead of writing, they got bogged down in procrastinating. I'll do it later. Another thing they did is just keep correcting the same 4 paragraphs over and over again. That kind of stuff where it has to be perfect. Here's the thing. In your eyes, nothing you do is ever going to be perfect. So do it and do it. Like, that's it. You don't have to do it perfect, but just do it. So sometimes we have this idea, and so actually that's something I've done since all this nonsense, and this is a good thing that happened from all this hospital stuff, is being able to go to my writing and say, look, I feel like God called me to do this. I'm going to do that. And now I've been writing all kinds. I'm getting closer and closer. I'm actually get published this year. Because I'm now not really that concerned with perfectionism. I mean, I might die. Yeah, you don't want to waste your time doing that kind of stuff, right? So there's kind of this idea where you don't get in the mindset of, I have to be more holy for God to use me. Newsflash, the only person God can't use is the person who thinks that they're holy enough for God to use. And so then also with that, just because God's using you, don't look at other people and say, I'm so much more holy than them. I have understanding that they don't have. I have wisdom that they don't. I mean, I just told you about how I was there for years. I knew everything about everything. I could tell you everything about something. It didn't do any good. Like it wasn't saving people. It wasn't changing anybody's lives. It was making me think that I was better than someone else just because I had knowledge from books hidden in my head. It's not that impressive when you think about it. But in our heads, we have these different things that make us better than other people. If I have more money than you, more knowledge than you, whatever. So then the second thing, God works through our working. Yeah, so the second thing, there are times God will make us wait. So yes, it is good in your going and doing to wait on God. That's absolutely true. Sometimes God will not let you move forward. He will keep you there. Or sometimes he'll tell you to go a different way. You're going somewhere and he will stop you and have you go a different way. I think a good example of this is when Paul, in the book of Acts, was getting ready to go minister to some people, and God said, hold up, not that way, go this way. It's kind of the same thing. So what should you do? Well, do this. Pray and do what you can. I don't have anything more spiritual than that because the Bible doesn't give us anything more spiritual than that. You pray and then you do what you can. It's easy. The thing is, we kind of do this whole thing. We have this idea in our head about this one divine inspired track for our life, right? We talk about falling in love, the one. We find about the job, the perfect job. We have this idea in our heads that there's this one straight path for our life. And if we miss it, then we'll miss everything. Nothing good in our life is going to happen. What could have been if I would have walked that perfect path? What is it? Chuck was joking about a couple weeks ago. If Coach would have put me in the third quarter, it's one of those things where we have these ideas of But here's the thing: oftentimes the majority of people in the Bible, God didn't give a specific thing to do. Even Moses, he said, "Hey, go rescue my people Israel." But did he give him a day-to-day itinerary? No. Did he give him who he should marry? No. Did he give him any of the other things except for lead my people Israel out of slavery? No. But we have this idea that every single moment of our life is this one path that we can't deviate from. So we come to this idea of, surely what you're saying is God helps those who help themselves. No, that's not what I'm saying at all. And I'll say this in two quick ways. First, God works through, wrong line. First off, God blesses those who obey. When you obey God, God blesses you. That's not saying that God helps those who help themselves. That's saying he told you to do something, you did it, and he blesses you when you do. And then number two, wisdom pays. When you do the wise thing, that's kind of its own reward, right? So I don't have money, so I get a job, and then I work, and then I get paid, and now I have money. That was just the effects of wisdom. If I would have sat on my butt and said, I don't have money now, I'm going to sit on the ground and cry. Well, I probably wouldn't have money tomorrow. So do you kind of get what I'm saying? Like, it's one of those things where it's not that God helps us who helps themselves, it's that he expects us to live wisely. And also he does bless us when we obey him. There's a story, and this is the last thing before we go to the application here, before we close things out. There's a story about these people who are stuck on a roof in a flood. It's actually one that my singer told me, Lauren. These people are stuck on this roof in a flood, and they're praying and asking God, please send us help. Please get us out of this situation. Help. God, we're going to die up here. So a guy comes by in a boat, and he says, hey, get on. I can get you out of here. And they say, no, we're waiting for God to answer our prayers. So he goes away and says, God, please answer us and save us from this flood. And so the guy comes back and says, look, it's kind of getting rough out here. Why don't you Just hop in the boat. I'll get you out of here. No. We're waiting and trusting in God. You kind of get what I'm saying? Like missing out on God working because we don't understand that God is working through people. So with that being said, think about the people who cause you the greatest annoyance in your life and realize that those people are also an opportunity for God to grow your faith. I mean, it's difficult because we don't like the people we don't like, obviously, but it's one of those things where God definitely does use things that we don't like, and he doesn't ask our permission either. So how do we apply this to our life? Well, first off, it is better to try and fail than to do nothing. It is better to try and fail than to do nothing. I am very well acquainted with college students. I was one. I lived with a bunch of them who procrastinated. One of them that I was actually in my dorm, he would do this thing where he'd have a paper that was due, and so he'd be like, oh, I'll write it eventually. So then the night before, he'd stay up all night and write it in a night, and then we would go to class, and he'd hand it in, and the professor would say, wow, this is great work, and you get an A. And then I'd struggle for weeks, and he'd, adequate, you get a B. And it's like, very frustrating time for me. But it is better to try and fail than to do nothing. If you are always waiting for this one divine inspired path, you will go your whole life waiting. God has given you skills and talents to use, so use them. Don't worry about finding the perfect ministry, the perfect job, the perfect wife. You just live your life in a way that honors God and let the rest of it just kind of fall by the wayside. God has a way of guiding. Did you know I never felt called to come down and live down here? Did you know that? I never really felt called to sing songs or lead a young adult. I never felt called. My wife never felt called to do the kids' church. We never felt like God say, hey, go and do this thing. There was opportunity. I didn't have anything to do, so I came down here and did it. That's not as spiritual as some people like it, but I mean, it's just, sorry. Maybe in a couple years I'll be more spiritual. So don't wait for a special revelation. Obey God on what you do know. See, what we do is we say, God, I want you to tell me the thing that I'm supposed to do, so I'm going to ignore these things that you have told me to do because of the things that you haven't told me to do. Okay, like this. How is your attitude doing? How do you feel about your mother and your father? How do you feel about your boss? How do you feel about your spouse or other significant people in your life? What kind of an attitude do you have? Are you carrying around wounds and hurts? Those kinds of things. Has God told you something about your finances? Maybe to stop spending like crazy, maybe to get a little bit of wisdom when it comes to debt. Well, no, that's not spiritual enough. Has God told you to get a job? Sometimes God leads us in ways where it's like, well, you need to start working. And it's like, well, but I don't really want to do that. I mean, I'm kind of busy and I don't really like the idea of work. I'm right there with you guys. I don't like the idea of work either. It's for the pigs, I say. But yet we still have to do it. So instead of waiting for some special revelation, obey God on what you already know to do. Is the thing that you're doing, is it wise? Well, God, I really, really, really want to get with this person. Okay, is that wise? Well, they're bitter. They hate men. They've been divorced 3 times. But I really love them. Well, that might not be the smartest thing. I mean, there comes a point in life where you have to say, hey, that's just not a smart thing to do. I'm not saying people who've been divorced can't be happy. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying when you're trying to make a decision, sometimes it's best to just sit back and say, am I compatible with this situation? Well, I want to move to Nevada, and I want to work in a casino. Well, okay, flashing lights give me a headache. And so there would always be that. There'd be people with a bunch of cologne. Colognes give me headaches. This would be a pretty miserable job. And also high wind and dry weather hurt my asthma. So I'd be really irritated the whole time that I lived there. So would it be wise for me to move to Nevada and work in a casino? No, probably not. Ask God, God, where are you going? And then go that way. Go where God is going. Do you see God doing something? Do you see God working? Go that way. Well, I'd much rather, do this thing that makes me feel happy. Okay, but you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunity. And the last thing, if you are doing what's wise with a good attitude and God hasn't told you otherwise, commit it to God, move on. And this is the very last thing that I had to say. If you're doing something that's wise, it's a smart thing to do, and you're doing it with a good attitude, okay. Well, I don't really feel called to this ministry. Well, Okay, is there a ministry that you feel like you would do good at? And don't worry about being called to it, or is it something you'd be good at? If you're doing what's wise and you have a good attitude, unless God tells you otherwise, commit it to the Lord and move on. What we do is we say, well, I'm going to go my own way and then commit it to the Lord. That's not what I said. I said, do it with a good attitude and do what's wise. And if God doesn't want you to do that, check this out. He'll talk to you and he'll say this, don't do that. Or he'll say, go do this. But until he says, don't do that or go do this, have a good attitude and do something wise. And it'll be okay. I mean, yeah, you're going to make mistakes in your life, but God will let you make mistakes. God doesn't have a way for you to go forward that does not include mistakes. I don't know how to tell you that other than how I just did. God will point you in the direction and let you make mistakes as you head in that direction. He doesn't micromanage you every step. And that's okay. Sometimes, some situations, there won't be a winning. Sometimes there'll be the lesser of two evils. And sometimes there will be a winning. It's one of those things. You will make mistakes, and that's okay. Wait for God, trust God, don't do nothing. And that's that's about it all, folks. So, well, okay. I guess if I had to summarize everything I said, do what you can, and stop worrying about finding God's will. Just do what you can, and be wise. Lord, I pray that you would help us as we move forward. Help us to really trust in you as we move forward, and to remember that you've called us to obey. Help us to remember that as we go, you are working through us. Help us not to go our own way in stubborn pride, but to submit to you. And to be able to discern the wise way, to be able to discern our hearts. Lord, I pray that you continue working in us and through us, and we love you, God. Amen.